Hello and welcome to the Norfolk town of Swaffham, from which we will be setting off directly north for the roughly 4 miles to Castle Acre, where the ruins of a nearly 1,000-year-old castle lie. The bells of the church bid us farewell as we make our way over to the road that will guide us most of the journey. It had been raining overnight and the day is cold, but I'm sure that won't cause any problems. Beyond the town's boundaries, the route becomes decidedly unfriendly to those of us who like using our legs to get about. Available space along the road is quickly running out, so to avoid becoming roadkill or even worse, cause someone else to get injured, we slip into an adjacent field. This right here is the chunkiest chunk of flint I've ever seen, but I imagine anyone from this area has seen a more impressive lump, since this region is absolutely covered in the stuff, with many buildings making use of it. A couple of miles into the walk, it becomes clear that trudging through long wet grass has caused my shoes to become flooded with cold water, to the point where I feel it sloshing around with every step. Eventually, bushes and trees force us to converge with the road we had escaped from. Thankfully, our uncomfortable jaunt along the side of an A road doesn't last long, and we turn into a much more peaceful road. My feet are very much glad to be out of the wet grass, but remain feeling like they're submerged in a fish tank. We cross the river Nar, which flows westward, and into the river Great Ouse at King's Lynn. Right here we are in the middle of the medieval walled town adjoining the castle. Quite confusingly, this first gateway we see is actually taking us out of the walled town. If this were 700 or 800 years ago, we would have already passed through a southern gate back at the bottom of this street, but all traces of it are gone. At first glance, all these man-made banks and ditches can be hard to wrap your head around, but thankfully other people with more knowledge and talent than me have provided a handy illustration of the site in its glory days. Walking through an eastern gatehouse, we enter the outer bailey, which in a lot of ways was like a self-contained town dedicated to supporting the day-to-day running of the castle. It included things like stables, livestock pens, workshops, and kitchens. In this case, the outline of buildings can be seen on the grass, including the Great Hall. This aerial view gives us a good shot of the rectangular outlines of some of the buildings in the outer bailey, with the Great Hall being the largest one in the centre. Something very clear when looking at satellite imagery is how the old Roman road of Petter's Way passes straight through the location of Castle Acre as it slices through Norfolk. Could that have factored into the decision to establish a fortification here? 1,000 years ago there wasn't much going on in this area, except perhaps a small settlement. Then a Norman nobleman by the name of William de Warenne, who had fought at the famous battle near Hastings in 1066, was awarded much land in the conquered England. This place would also later come into his possession, and soon he set about constructing a residence that would become Castle Acre. Obviously, whatever was initially built under William de Warenne on this spot was nothing like what we see today. What we have are the successive additions and alterations that happened over decades and under the ownership of his descendants. Here is what's left of the grandest building in the whole castle complex, the keep. As mentioned before, this region is covered in flint, a fact that's noticeable when walking through any town, but especially so when you see how this entire multi-layered fortification is constructed from the material. Surprisingly, Castle Acre doesn't appear to have survived to the end of the Middle Ages, as according to a survey in 1397, it had already fallen into a state of ruin. This tiny, unassuming village of less than 1,000 residents offers a good deal for fans of the Middle Ages. Not only does it have the expansive fortification we've come to see, but also in its southwest are the monumental ruins of Castle Acre Priory. The remoteness of the location means getting here by public transport is a bit of a mission. It's possible to take a bus from King's Lynn through Swaffham, but this service is very infrequent, and you might end up stranded here, sleeping overnight curled up at the bottom of the moat. But I'll let you go now. See ya.